Hello, beautiful human being, and welcome to the Rhyme Magic Show. So today's episode is going to be one that will be triggering on some level. And alongside that trigger is a humongous opportunity to gain the things that you want most from this life. So I've called this episode Attachment is the Ultimate Block. And we're going to get deep into attachment. And I'm going to share a vulnerable story of my last 7 years and how I've very consciously used this principle to be, really growing faster than I've ever grown before in the most important way. So before jumping into the episode, if you haven't yet left a review on this podcast, but you have been listening to the episodes, it would be really meaningful for me if you could do that. It helps a lot with the show's reach and getting the message out there. So would love it if you could do that. Let's jump into the episode. Now, attachment is a phenomena of the mind that happens in response to being afraid. And this concept of being scared is so demonized in society. People don't feel comfortable to acknowledge what fear can look like. And so if I was to be having a conversation with someone and they were telling me about their problems and why they're not breaking through in their business, let's say, and then I turn around and I say, are you scared of doing ads? The response that I'll get 9 times out of 10 is, oh no, I'm not scared. I just don't know what I'm doing that well. But it's actually really important to acknowledge how fear shows up for us in life almost all of the time, to the degree that I feel that most people operate from fear at least 90% of the time. Now, just remembering as a brief summary of the way that I view the world, we can be living in one of two consciousness states in any moment. We can be living in our heart, and our heart consciousness is fulfillment inspired. It desires for us to grow, it desires for us to love, it desires for us to evolve, and it desires for us to experience life. And the real underpinning quality of being in the heart is presence. When we're in our heart, we're present. We're aware and we're present with life in the moment, actually able to take it in, actually aware of what we're doing and why we're doing it. Very, very rare experience to be in that consciousness state, because most people are so reactive that they're in their other consciousness state that I call being in the head. The opposite of being in the heart. It's the polarity of being in the heart, being in the head. And unlike the head, unlike the heart, which is driven by fulfillment, it's not driven by fulfillment. It's just fulfillment orientated. The head is driven by fear. It's driven by survival. And we all have, it's not as linear as this, but our amygdala, that center of our brain, the oldest part of our brain, which is the animal brain, the reptile brain, as it's sometimes referred to, is fear-based. And so we have this part of us that's dictating our behavior most of the time. And if you go into the wild and you watch animals in their natural habitat, they're always 24/7 trying to find food, or they're scanning to not be food. They're scanning for danger so they don't become the predator's next meal. And so there's this hypervigilance of need to get food, but also need not to be food. And that lens through which they view life is dictated by their brain, their animal brain. And our animal brain that we have as well is also fear-driven. And our brain is quite complex, like other mammals as well, where fear is so centered around how we need to behave around other humans, because we're mammals and we rely on other humans for survival, just like any other mammals survive in groups in the wild. And so we have this complex set of behavior algorithms in our brain that say, well, you need to act in the way that you were told that you should act when you were younger, because that script that was coded from all your experiences growing up, that's how you fit in with the tribe and don't get abandoned. That's how you survive. And so most of the time in this modern world, people are in that fear consciousness. And instead of experiencing the presence of the heart, they're in the pressure of the head. Instead of being oriented towards fulfillment, they're oriented towards fear. Just whatever has to happen to stay safest from the perception of the mind, which is a little bit outdated and not necessarily well geared for a modern lifestyle. So that whole thing is, in a nutshell, we are scared most of the time. If you're in a job that you don't like, well, it's because you're afraid of leaving it. Yeah. If you're single and you want to be in a relationship, it's probably because you're afraid of approaching people or getting rejected. So you might not be rocking back and forth in a cradle position in the corner of your room going, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared. But that's that consciousness state, that aspect of our brain has still influenced the way that we're behaving. If someone is binge eating all the time and they're not at their healthiest body weight, it's because they're eating more food than their body needs as a way of suppressing emotion. So that person, when they're going to the ice cream shop and you're like, are you scared? They're, I'm not scared. I just want an ice cream. It's like, but you're scared of feeling. That's why you want the ice cream. But the person doesn't have the awareness that they're scared, right? So the very important acknowledgement we must make before getting into this idea of attachment is realizing that attachment is the symptom of the fact that most people, most of the time, are feeling afraid. So those of us that are most afraid in society are those that grew up with really intense trauma that led us at a young age, not just to feel that we had done something that wasn't in alignment with what we should have done. So if you start screaming and hitting a guest in your family home growing up, and your parents say, hey, that's not okay, and the kid feels really embarrassed, that feeling of embarrassment is shame. And that's healthy shame, because it's not healthy in society to go beating on people all the time. And so the kid goes, oh, wow, I feel embarrassed. But that's because I did something that was shameworthy. Now, if that child, every time they're trying to do something, like they're at the park and mom's like, hey, be polite, say this. Hey, don't do that. Hey, get away from there. Hey, do this. And the kid's feeling like everything I do, I can't do it right. And I'm feeling embarrassed, not just because I yelled at a guest one night, but I feel embarrassed all the time because I don't feel like I can get it right. Or I cried, and every time I cry, my parents tell me to stop crying, it's okay, it's okay. And the kid goes, is there something wrong with me? I understand that I did a behavior this is not what a kid's consciously thinking, but this is what happens in the developmental stages of their brain, forming a set of beliefs on the world and a way to approach life. It's a very different situation for a kid to experience a little bit of shame versus a kid thinking, I am shame-worthy. And that's the difference between toxic shame, and that's the difference between healthy shame. Now, those of us that have either been rejected for who we were growing up or not fully embraced for who we were growing up, or in a situation where very intense trauma happened to us. Sexual abuse, physical abuse, constant emotional abuse. If this, or even if it's not consistent, but a really intense form of abuse, the child can form an identity of shame, toxic shame. Really should have brought a water bottle for today's episode, golly. Then that child can go, there must be something wrong with me. There must be something wrong with me. And for a child growing into an adult, or at any stage from that point where that identity is formed all the way up to when they die, if it's not worked with and healed and learned to be loved, then that person is walking around feeling inherently shame-worthy. They're feeling inherently defective and flawed just for who they are. There must be something wrong with me. Now, as I said, we're so driven for survival. We're human beings. The human aspect, the animal aspect, the Homo sapien aspect, we need to survive. That being aspect of human being, that implies that we have a deeper consciousness. And if the humanity inside of us that's survival driven has formed a belief that we are inherently defective, we are less than human, less than average, there's something wrong with us, we have toxic shame, and that's a belief that's formed, then that person that's formed that belief is walking around feeling that they don't deserve to be around other people. They don't deserve to fit in. And if someone's believing that, they're constantly in their nervous system feeling unsafe. Constantly feeling unsafe. Why? Because if we don't feel like we belong and we don't feel like that other people are going to like us, because our survival is contingent on being in a group, being in the tribe, there's this hypervigilance of I need to always be changing myself, being different, trying harder, being better, being smarter, justifying myself, comparing myself, because there's a problem right now. I ain't safe because there's something wrong with me. Now, that is very, very detrimental for the nervous system, because the nervous system is constantly firing, saying there's a problem, there's a problem. This might look like anxiety. There's a problem, dysregulation, and it leads to all sorts of health conditions, but also just the standard of living is low. And so someone that's in that state, they're walking around life feeling unsafe. I'm tempted just to talk through the whole episode like that. Okay. Far out. If someone's feeling like that as they're going through their life, they're feeling scared a lot of the time. Now, if someone's feeling scared and their belief system is, I'm defectively flawed, I'm unsafe because other people might not like me. If they don't like me, I don't belong, they won't protect me. Maybe I'm going to get ousted from the tribe, and that's what's happening as an internal frame or perspective of life. Then this is where attachment forms in intensity. Let's say, for example, someone's going through their life and they just desperately need the business to work. If it doesn't work, then everyone's going to think I look stupid. If I don't get that promotion, my parents aren't going to love me. If I don't get into that uni course, I'm not going to be a somebody in life and no one's going to love me. And the reason why is because the person with toxic shame who's always walking around feeling less than human, less than average, worse than average, the only way to escape that pain is either to inflict the trauma that happened to them to someone else, to create some temporary feeling of inflation because they're always feeling deflated, some temporary feeling of superiority. I'm the one that's now in this position. Not consciously chosen to do that, but it's definitely what happens. That's how trauma gets inherited through generations. And the most common response to having toxic shame is, well, in order to escape the feeling of deflation, I've got to try to be inflated. I've got to try to be superhuman. I feel less than human, so I've got to try to be more than human. And that's what happens. That's what happened to me, because I grew up with toxic shame, feeling like there must be something wrong with me. The only way to escape that is to intensely drive towards success. It's to be the best of all time, because I don't feel safe just to be myself. Just be my authentic self, do the things that light me up, spend time doing with people that I love and know that I deserve to be there, and I can just be myself and go through life like that. That was not my experience. My experience was walking around as a constant apology, feeling like I didn't deserve to be there and people aren't going to like me. So I'd go into conversations trying to big note myself or manipulate people into thinking that I'm more than what I am, just so that I feel safe as being worthy of just existing. And that is a very, very destabilizing approach to life. And what it leads to is big attachments, because we form these ideas of, well, I need this thing. If I don't get it, I'm still less than human. I'm unsafe. And that's where attachment forms into life. And so our head is very, very, when we're in our head and when we're in hypervigilance, which most people are in, even if they don't have toxic shame, because of the busyness of modern life and how our nervous system gets confused and overwhelmed. And most people are in fear consciousness most of the time, because there isn't enough space to connect to the heart and for people to have awareness and presence and regulation. If you're not getting enough sleep, boom, your capacity to be regulated is already really impacted. If you then get up in the morning and because you're feeling tired because your alarm went off and didn't give you enough sleep, that you have a coffee, well, you're even more dysregulated now, and you're going to crash harder later. You're probably going to be making unhealthy decisions, eating processed food, sugary foods, scrolling, watching Netflix. All these things are really harmful for the nervous system. So then we're more dysregulated, and we're more in our head, we're more in fear consciousness. And when we're in fear consciousness, because we're feeling dysregulated, in other words, dysregulation means that our sympathetic nervous system is on. Our sympathetic nervous system means that we're in fight or flight. Why would we fight or flight? Because it's a threat. So when we're dysregulated, it's essentially, I'm scared. I'm scared. It's not a conscious necessarily, I'm holding a butcher's knife in my corner because I think, and I'm rocking back and forth, terrified for my life because I think a burglar is coming in. It's just walking around not feeling fully safe, not feeling fully present, not feeling fully aware and grounded and connected, centered, authentic, patient, curious, open-hearted. This is what it's like to be in the heart, connected. And if someone's in that state, because there's that dysregulation, there's that fear, that leads to attachment. So in any area of your life, any fear leads to an attachment. So let's say you're starting your business and you're afraid that you're going to get rejected by doing some posts saying, I'm launching this new business. And you're afraid that your friends are going to think you're stupid and, oh my gosh, they're going to judge you, or your parents are going to see it and they're going to be all worried about you, and then they're going to give you some big lecture and you're scared of that. That means you're attached to people liking you. Now, if you're in your heart at that point and you knew that you were whole, perfect, and complete, you knew that if you launch the business and it goes well or it doesn't go well, it's okay. You're going to be fine. And you knew that you're in your heart. Then when you're launching that business and you put it out on social media, there's not as much attachment. There's a lot more regulation. Now, one thing that I didn't mention before is that, yes, when we're in our head, our amygdala is turned on, the fear center of our brain. But when we're in our heart, the prefrontal cortex turns on. The prefrontal cortex is the place of critical thinking, strategic thinking, imagination, intuition. It's the part that allows us to really switch on our intelligence and be performing and allowing our mind to be operating at the highest level. That completely shuts down when we become dysregulated. The prefrontal cortex gets completely shut down and the amygdala turns on. And that's where the energy of the brain goes towards, which means that Yeah. We're not able to be present, conscious, aware, grounded, etc. And so when we are with the in our heart, then we don't have the attachment as much because we know that we're okay either way. We're whole, perfect, and complete. And so that is a very, very important concept to understand, that in life, the only reason we form really intense attachments is when we have really intense fear. And most people have something, especially in this space, most people have some area of their life that they've got a really big attachment towards creating. So it might be, I need to break through in my business. I need to break through. And maybe that person's been spending 3 or 4 years doing everything, spending all their money. They're now in debt. They're trying to break through. They're desperate. Oh my gosh, if I fail this, everything's screwed. And that's their big attachment. And people have attachments in every micro area of their life, in every situation. If they're dysregulated, there's fear. If there's fear, their head's trying to control a certain reality and they're attaching to that reality. So you're going into a conversation and you're feeling dysregulated, you're attached to being liked. So then the head uses a control strategy of pleasing. Okay, cool, I've got to be liked. I'm attached to everyone liking me, so I'm pleasing. There's not a regulation there. There's not an authenticity there. There's not presence there. And so that person is attached to being liked in that situation. But out of the situational realm, as a macro theme, most people have a really big main attachment, or a couple or 3 really big main attachments. So like I said, if someone's could be breaking through in their business, that's their big attachment. And until that happens, they're screwed because that person's scared. If someone's attached, they're scared. They're scared. They're like, oh my gosh, right now, I've got all these people watching how I'm doing. And if I don't break through, I'm going to look like an idiot. My parents aren't going to love me. My friends aren't going to love me. I'm never going to find a partner because I can't even make my own business work. And there's all these meanings and fears that are attached to it. Hence why there's a big attachment. That could be one. Another one could be, I just need to find a man. I need to find a man. I'm so embarrassed. I'm single. All my friends are having kids and have been getting married and I'm single. I'm attached. And another one could be someone's overweight. I'm just attached to getting my body. I've got to lose the weight. Got to find the next diet. Got to get clothes that look better on me, more expensive. You've got to pay for lap band surgery and got to figure this out. And there's this hyper vigilant, desperate, obsessive attachment of, I need to get this sorted. Someone else might be, I need to save more money. I'm terrified of not having enough money, having enough money. And all of these big macro attachments are rooted in fear, like I said. And if someone's in fear because they've got this big macro attachment, then the cascading effect from that big theme, even if in a moment they're not fully thinking about it, it has an impact on the way that our nervous system allows us to feel. Another one might be getting better grades, need to get the good grades for someone that's at school or in uni. Need to get the grades. Oh my gosh, if I don't get it and if I don't fail, I'm screwed. Everything's going to be stuffed up. I need to find a job. And there's all these big macro attachment that someone could have. And there is an enormous opportunity within this. Now, I'm going to tell you my story of my big macro attachment. So from a very young age, I was very shy, very dysregulated. I grew up with 2 drug-using parents that were both at the lowest mental health that they could be. Essentially means suicidal. And yeah, a lot of intensity that they went through in their lives, and so open-hearted and well-meaning. When they were regulated, that just didn't happen very often. So essentially I grew up with a lot of toxic shame. And that toxic shame said, Daddy and Mommy are only going to love you, Ryan, if you become wildly successful at everything. So when I went to school, I had to be the best at everything. In my own map, that wasn't directly said, but small little versions of that were said, mainly from Dad. So I grew up with this belief, I'm not okay for who I am. I'm unsafe just being myself. His dad was very controlling, constantly micromanaging me and always focusing on how I could do something better, whether it's the way I'm holding my fork or the way I'm spending my money or the way I performed in that football match. And just to give a little idea of what would happen in my own psychology is I remember one season of football. I was very, very good at Australian rules football. And when I was 11 maybe, or 12, I remember at the end of the football season just crying and crying and crying, so terrified that I'd had such a bad season. I played so badly and just feeling awful about it. The reason why is because I was already shy and I already had toxic shame. And then on top of that, Dad, after every match or after every quarter, because there's 4 quarters in a match, he'd say, hey, you could do this and try harder here and do this. And so on the way home, I just wanted Dad to say, hey, great game, man. But to try to help me perform better, but because it came from a place of him feeling like he needed to be better, he needed to be good, and that was projected onto me. So it was get better, be better, do this better, do this better. And it wasn't like an intense, he was screaming at me, but to me, I just wanted to be accepted and loved for who I was. Anyway, I performed well and better because of that. And I got to the end of the season though, and I felt like I had the worst season ever. But then I actually got invited to a special award ceremony because I was one of the best players out of all the teams. So let's say there's like 15 teams and there's like 20 to 30 people in each team. Then there's like, I don't know, let's just say 300 people or something like that. 300, 400 kids. And I won the best player out of every kid, let's say 300 kids, by about 30% more votes. So I was the best player in the entire league by a big solid stretch. And I cried at the end of the season because I thought I did so crap. So I had a warped sense of who I was and how I performed. And the reason I was the best player in the league is because at like 8 years old, 9 years old, I was taking myself for 5-kilometer runs every morning. Wake up early, I would do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups. I had like a 6-pack and guns when I was like 8, 9, 10 years old because I was trying to be the best. So you could go, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. It wasn't cool. It wasn't cool because most of the time I was feeling hypervigilant and scared I wasn't doing well enough. And then when I won, I felt anxiously inflated. Oh my gosh, I did it. Oh my gosh, I did it. And then my mind instantly switched to what do I have to do next? And I go back into hypervigilance, back into dysregulation. And so that same programming stayed in my system. That survival script, as it's called by psychotherapists often, the script that I formed of who I need to be worthy in the world. Well, that led to me becoming an entrepreneur and then driving hard. And I was first in all sorts of different businesses between like 18 and 21, 22 over that 3-4 year period. I launched 10 different businesses and some were quite successful, others not. Others never really even started. They were more in the seed stage. And so I was like young entrepreneur. And then I went, I'm going to do what I actually love. It wasn't as, I'm obviously paraphrasing an enormous story, but I just was confronted with the idea of, is this what I really love doing? And so I was like, you know what? My dream would be to be a speaker because when I was 16, Tony Robbins changed my life, and here I am 5 years later, and with the story of I need to wait until I'm older to be able to do that. And I was like, what if I die in a year? And I wasn't doing what I love. So I started being a speaker, and I leveraged my marketing and sales skills to coach in the area of business to help people get clients. And I built that up. I started that business, and I thought, this is a passion. I'm doing what I love. And I built it up, took massive action. I worked 100 hours a week for probably 5 to 7 years straight on average. Not every single week, but most of the time, most days, going into the office every Saturday, going into the office every Sunday, and would start work 6, 7 a.m., finish work anywhere from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m., 5 a.m. It's just working crazy for years and years and years. So because I worked so hard, I built a lot of success, multi-million-dollar business. And because I'd felt so unworthy and the toxic shame was so low for my whole life, feeling I'm less than human, now I'm attempting to be a human, superhuman, and I'm getting some wins. But even with these wins, being in my early 20s and a multi-million-dollar entrepreneur with all these big flashy things and this financial freedom and stuff, and I would still feel insecure and constantly be trying to prove myself and achieve at a higher level, feeling like I was significantly far behind where I should be and where I could be. Scared that I'm not going to reach my potential. Scared. And so my attachment was being the greatest of all time at something. That was my attachment. And my entire life was a dysregulated phenomenon where I would be constantly feeling overwhelmed and constantly feeling not good enough. And I was constantly feeling better than people, but I was constantly feeling worse than people as well. So that was my attachment. And I didn't realize it until 2017. I started meditating. And then after about a year of meditation, I realized, because meditation gave me awareness, which I didn't have before. It gave me awareness to see a really deep truth. And so I was doing some one-to-one sessions with my meditation teacher. She challenged me to go overseas and have a break. And I was like, I can't do that. The business isn't going to be able to survive. She ended up convincing me to do it. Went overseas, went to Bali for a week to do nothing. And I swore I would never holiday for more than 3 days. And I was doing this 7-day holiday where I wasn't really doing much. And after 3 days of having space, and after meditating for, let's just say, I don't even know how long, my time frames are usually warped. Let's say I was meditating for like 6 to 12 months. So spaciousness had started to enter my mind, and now I had more potent space going away to Bali. And after a few days of that space, maybe it was more than 6 to 12 months. Maybe it was like 12 to 18 months, actually. That feels more accurate. So let's say a year. And I went to Bali a few days after doing nothing. I'm in a taxi going from one location to the other in Bali. And I just had the realization hit me through awareness that I'd never given myself permission to enjoy my life. I had enjoyed my life at times, but I didn't give myself permission to enjoy my life. And I burst into tears, and this grief just poured out of me, and I was crying for days. I cried for close to 4 days most of the time. And I realized at that point, another layer deeper, that how attached I was, that I was trying to prove myself with my business. I donated over $100,000 to charity and had a coaching business where I was helping people, which was true. It was a service-driven business, but inside, the thing that was driving me, that was having me work so hard and build the business, was fear of not being good enough. And so that whole thing led me to burn myself out. I had intense adrenal fatigue where there was no cortisol being produced in my body. Like, it was just, my adrenals were completely burnt to the ground. by being dysregulated, overworking, and ignoring my body so hard. I was burning my relationships with my family, my sister, my staff, my friends. My intimate relationship was super toxic because I just didn't give it attention. I had no awareness. And so my attachment pretty much destroyed my life, which is perfect. Everything happens for a reason. I'm super grateful for the whole thing, but that's what attachment was doing to me. Now, this is the hero moment in the story. When I had this realization and I allowed it to integrate and assimilate in my system for the months or however long it took, I then realized if I actually want to be a role model, if I actually want to experience a life of high quality, I can't just be loving myself conditionally like this. And my biggest attachment right now that I think, I would be dead if I didn't have this business, if I didn't have this mission. This is everything to me. In other words, I was saying, I'm inherently less than human, and this is my only shot at being more than human. And without being more than human, I'm less than human. And with being less than human, I'm constantly in fight or flight, and I don't deserve to be loved, and I'm unsafe. So I can't not have that. And I realized that. And when I realized it and I assimilated the realization, I made the most courageous decision of my entire life. And that was to shut my business down, shut the thing that I had the most attachment down. And I then put myself in a position where my intention was to learn to love myself without having that identity of being the big shot young entrepreneur. And that was the beginning of actually opening up to life. And people will be like, why would you do that? Because I had a very profitable business. Went through some huge financial hemorrhaging as I was growing too fast. And then I turned it around and got it very profitable. But I knew it was a knowing deep in my heart that it was time to shut this thing down. And that decision was the most courageous thing I've ever done, because I essentially said, I'm going to look my biggest attachment in the eyes and I'm going to say goodbye. And that put me in a position where I had to learn to regulate and feel safe and feel whole and feel worthy without the thing that all my survival and identity and conditioning and security and confidence was built off. And that was the most liberating journey that I've ever been on. And so now when I work with people, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong with having a successful business. I have a successful business. It's much smaller than it used to be, but it's going to grow over time, and I'm going to continue to develop and grow in business. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with wanting a partner. There's nothing wrong with any of the content of what people are attached to. It's the context that underpins the attachment. It's what's the desire built off? Is it something that you need to feel good enough? Or is it something that you already feel whole inherently? And then this is just something that's a beautiful bonus. Because that is freedom. That is freedom. That is the only true freedom. If you have attachments that are prerequisites for you to feel good enough, you're not free. Those attachments are owning you. If you're attached to being in a relationship, I just need to find my woman, and you walk into a shopping center and you see women, you see people together, and it's making you feel certain ways, and there's that comparison, and it's attached. Because there's nothing wrong with having the desire. It's the attachment that reveals to us the insecurity. It reveals to us what is owning you right now. What is owning you? Because your biggest attachment is the thing that owns you and blocks you more than anything in your entire life. It's the thing that's weighing you down and blocking your self-worth and blocking your freedom and blocking what you actually want from your life, which is a deep connection to wholeness. Because if you know that you're worthy of love, you're walking around receiving love. You're receiving the flow of love from the universe that's there every moment. But if you're walking around saying, I'm not complete, I'm not whole, in fact, there's lack, I'm lacking, then there's that searching, that grasping, then there's constantly walking around, not letting the love in, not feeling worthy of what's around you. And it is blocking it. So there is a big invitation right now for you in this moment, listening to this podcast that you felt drawn to listen to ask yourself, what is the thing that you go, no, I couldn't live without that. I couldn't live without that. Yeah, cool, Ryan, thanks. It was nice learning from you while I did, but now that you're trying to say that, I should be okay without this, that's actually unhealthy. What do you mean, can I be single for the rest of my life? We're meant to be in relationships. And then all the stories come up, all the aggression comes up, all the F you, man, comes up, because that's the biggest threat to your survival, because you don't feel that you're safe and worthy of survival and worthy of love without it. How do I know? Because I wanted to storm out of the room and kick the door down at the meditation retreat where the seed was planted of, hey, dude, you're attached to your identity of being a successful entrepreneur. What if you weren't in business anymore? And I was like boiling up. I was like, just thought, I'm here to improve myself, and you're trying to take me away from the area that I grow, that I'm great at, that I've succeeded in, that's my best vehicle. And you're trying to convince me of that. You're just jealous because you don't have the courage to do all this stuff. And I start to weave these stories, project, get a bit vicious internally. I wasn't saying it out loud. And I just, they were all feedback of how attached I was. If I said to you, okay, cool, how about you don't exercise for the next year? And you're like, start to get hot and start to get frustrated. Well, there's an attachment to exercise. What if you didn't exercise? What if you never lost the weight and you never had the body you have right now? What if you stacked on 10 kilos, 20 kilos, 30 kilos? Could you still love yourself? And you might be saying, well, that's just stupid. That's not self-love. Self-love's eating healthy. Cool. All these stories are great. The point is that, could you? Because Ram Dass is healthy, was healthy before he passed. He was healthy. He was very conscious. He felt whole, perfect, and complete, and he was still overweight. Why? Because he had a stroke and lost access to half his body and was wheelchair bound. So a situation happened when he was overweight. So it could happen to you. And could you love yourself in that situation? Would you be okay with being single? I remember at one point, a dear friend of mine, who's a woman that is happily single and has been for a while. And I just remember feeling disappointed about being single myself and just projecting onto this person on a phone call. I remember asking her, like, well, what sort of man do you want to be with? And how's your search for love going? And she just saying, I don't really want to find someone right now, to be honest with you. I'm kind of happy being single. And I was just like, in my mind, skeptical, because I was projecting. I was like, she ain't happy. She just is scared of approaching, or scared of getting rejected, or scared of intimacy. Because I was scared of being alone and felt unworthy without calling my queen in. So could you love yourself if you had a divorce? Could you love yourself if you emotionally ate? Could you love yourself if you watch porn? Could you love yourself if you didn't break through in your business and you were an employee for the rest of your life? Could you love yourself if you stayed at the current weight, or you lost your looks, or you got broken up with? It's not saying, hey, you should do all these things, but can you love yourself in them? That's the opportunity for freedom. So my question to you is, what's the area of your life right now where you hold the biggest attachment? And don't bypass, don't discredit the opportunity by saying, well, should I detach from life too? Should I just, I'm attached to being alive. Should I just get rid of that? Let's actually just go with the opportunity here. What are you attached to? Give it up. Be honest. And it might be, hey, I'm attached to the gym and I go 5-6 times a week and I have to go or else I feel fat and lazy, and I notice that I'm not fit enough and scared that my girlfriend's not going to find me attractive enough, or my boyfriend, or whatever it is. Or I'm not going to be good looking enough for someone to find me attractive. Or maybe it's attached to your fashion and your style. And you're nervous that if you don't look cool enough, people aren't going to like you. What is it? Because if you can own that and you can hold yourself through that, you have the opportunity to liberate yourself like nothing else. If this is the biggest opportunity. Let's say, for example, you're attached to your style and you start walking around wearing clothes from Kmart that aren't that fashionable. No offense, Kmart, because it's got some cool stuff. But if you did that, that opportunity to learn to love yourself with that and feel whole with that, there's way more opportunity for growth there than there is making a little bit more money in your business or eating a little bit healthier this week, because that's your opportunity. This is the area. This is the thing. This is the cave you fear to enter, and it holds the treasure you seek. This is it. This is your moment. This is the area. And so what could you do with that? Well, I could soften the blow and say, well, you don't have to give it up for life. You can still have the thing. You just have to be detached. But I want you to sit with the fullness of it. What if you never have it again? What if you have to let go of it for life? This literally could be your relationship. You might be happily married for 10 years and sitting in the idea of, would I be okay single? Could I love myself still if my partner came to me today and said, I want a divorce? Or if I felt like I wanted to have a divorce? And I think staying in a relationship and being resilient and working through things is great. That's not the point of what I'm talking about. If you can contemplate, this in a macro is death contemplation, which is a Buddhist tool. It's a Buddhist tool, death contemplation. But it's just a death of a different kind. Every fear that we have is ultimately fear of death. I'm afraid of heights. Yeah, because you're afraid of dying. I'm afraid of snakes. Afraid of dying. I'm afraid I'm not going to get the promotion, because if you don't get the promotion, people might not like you. They might oust you from the tribe, and then you'll die. Everything's a fear of death. I'm afraid of change. Yeah, because fear of the unknown. There could be a threat there that could lead to your death. Everything is a fear of death. Death contemplation, letting go contemplation. Death is the ultimate letting go. It's letting go of the physical body. So death contemplation, chunked up, well, that's the ultimate chunk up. So chunked down into a micro example. Whatever you're most attached to, can you sit with the idea of being okay without it? I'm not saying divorce your partner just so you can take on board this opportunity, but contemplate it. Contemplate you, not contemplate, oh, would it be better and cool to sleep with other people? No. Would you be okay? Would you be okay without it? If you never broke through in your business, can you love yourself? If you never lost the weight, can you love yourself? And I can tell you, all of my power and all of my confidence that's true, unconditional, that comes from a place of wholeness that I have right now, because my self-worth is the highest it's been times 1,000. And I make a lot less money than I used to. And I have a lot less significance than I used to externally. I used to be walking around the city of Melbourne and I'd have 2, 3, every little outing I had, 2 or 3 people would come up to me and be like, you're that guy that does those videos. I have millions of views and there's only 5 million people in Melbourne. So a lot of the people that viewed it, a lot of people in Melbourne had seen me. People will come up, oh, you're that guy. And every time I'd think, fuck, I'm successful, man. Look, I'm a mini celebrity. That doesn't happen anymore. That doesn't happen anymore. But guess what? I feel more confident. And I've got a big mission here. I'm not letting go of the mission. My mission's to be of service, but I can't be of service for you if I don't love myself. And the capacity for me to serve comes from my wholeness. If I serve from a place of fear, I project that. And that's what I did for years. So the opportunity here for you, can you let go of that thing? Not you should and destroy it and never get it again, but can you be okay if that was to happen? That's the invitation. What are you most afraid of letting go of? Can you commit to being celibate for 6 months? Can you commit to not going on a date for 6 months? Can you commit to not going to the gym for 6 months? That's so unhealthy, Ryan. I tell you what's more unhealthy? Walking around feeling like your whole life is hinged on you actually looking a certain way because you're hyper vigilant all the time. Can you love yourself without it? Your biggest block in life is this attachment. And the only way that you can be okay without this attachment is to know that you're whole. And the way to be able to find that faster is to titratingly, meaning discernibly, maturely, biting off the appropriate amount to be able to sit in the discomfort that comes without it so you can foster the wholeness. This is what happened for me. I'm not saying, hey, go into it and do everything right now. Just quit that, lose that, let go of that. I'm just saying there's an opportunity here. And if you're on this podcast, you're here for a reason. Maybe at the bare minimum, it's just contemplation. Contemplating not having that thing. There can be a lot of power in just contemplating, could I love myself at this weight? And then choosing for the answer to be yes. That is incredibly empowering. So I'm going to leave it there for today. Please leave a review on the podcast. I love you guys to bits. Really, really encouraging you to take this on. It's very challenging, but you got this. You got this. You got this. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace out.